If you are looking for tips to become more stealthy in Dead by Daylight, you have come to the right place. Today we are going to be covering 5 tips with examples that are going to make you a lot harder to find as well as help you avoid chases. But before we go ahead and hop right into it, guys, if you guys wouldn't mind, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I would appreciate it. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and cover our 5 tips for stealth. So for our first tip, we're going to focus on perks and loadouts and what you should be running, or at least some of the perks that might help you be a little bit more stealthy. One of the most important things you must know to be a little bit more stealthier is picking the right perks if you're going to play a little bit more stealthy. So obviously this is going to be completely subjective. Everyone's going to have a different way of doing it. So it's going to be a little bit different for everyone. But you want to make sure that you have perks that are going to make you a little bit harder to find. My current loadout that I like to use actually quite often is Distortion, Kindred, Self-Aware, and Spine Chill. Obviously, your perks are probably going to be a little bit different from mine. I just like to run all stealth perks just because I play a lot of solo survivor, so it makes me a lot harder to find. If I could recommend 2 perks that you should definitely try to get, or at least try to use frequently often, would be Distortion and Self-Aware. Distortion's going to hide your aura and scratch marks for 10 seconds each time your aura is revealed. So, for example, if the killer has barbecue and chili, your aura and your scratch marks will be hidden for 10 seconds. I would also recommend Self-Aware just because it's a really good perk and your walk speed is increased by 20% just by default once you run the perk. And you also get to see your scratch marks as well, so it's kind of useful to be able to see where your scratch marks are and just kind of see how long they last. It's actually really useful whenever you're trying to stealth. But with all the pre-game stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and cover our in-game tips. The second tip that we are going to go over whenever it comes to stealth is not running when the killer is right next to us, or at least semi-close to us. You would actually be pretty surprised on how often it happens. Let's go ahead and go over an example of where following this tip actually helps us not get caught. So as you can see here, I'm repairing a generator, then I hear the killer's terror radius, so I know the killer is nearby. Once I hear the killer's terror radius, I decide to go ahead and tuck into a corner here, and then I see Claudette run by, and then I see the killer Nemesis run past me. I also walked towards Nemesis while he was in mid-chase. All he had to do was look to his right, and then he obviously would have seen me. But because I didn't run or leave scratch marks, he had no idea that I was actually right there. Now let's say that I actually would have panicked, or if I would have just ran away while he was in mid-chase, he actually may have seen me and he would have known I was there. But luckily we just kind of walk away and he had no idea, that we were right there. But let's go over another example where we do the same exact thing. As you can see here in this example, Kate and we are working on a generator, and Bubba comes right to our generator. As I start to hear his terror radius, I go ahead and crouch in a little corner on the hill here, and then Kate runs past me and Bubba doesn't even see me. This allows me to not get caught, and I'm able to get back on the generator while Kate is being chased. The reason this tip is very important is because even though I'm literally hiding right in front of Bubba, he has no idea I am there whatsoever. The best way to think about this tip is sometimes, less is more. Kind of like the examples I showed you, where even though I was hiding in plain sight in front of the killer, they had no idea I was right next to him because I didn't run or leave scratch marks. But let's go into tip number 3. The third tip that we are going to cover that is going to help you out with your stealth is map knowledge. Now, map knowledge is something that's just kind of acquired over time that you'll just kind of learn from playing Dead by Daylight. But I am going to show you kind of how this pertains to stealth and how it can help you out whenever you're trying to be a little bit more stealthy. So as you can see here in this example, Yui and we are working on a generator, and then the spirit decides to come to our generator. Once the spirit comes, I decide to tuck into a small corner right here by the lockers, and even at one point I'm right behind her, but she looks in a very common area where survivors hide, right behind this wall right here. Since I know Yui is going to be caught, I go ahead and walk out of the room, and then I tuck into the little corner right next to the bathroom door. Now, the reason why this tip is very important is because sometimes you can just hide in very uncommon areas that killers will rarely look. This is especially true when you are going against a very inexperienced killer. Now, I will say this does not always work out, because once you go against better killers, they're going to look in more areas, but it definitely can help you out, especially if you are a little bit newer to DBD or you're not in the higher ranks yet. But let's go ahead and go to our fourth tip. The fourth tip that I would like to cover that I feel is very underutilized, and it's actually a very basic tip that you should just do in general, but this is going to help you out a lot, especially whenever you are playing a little bit more stealthy, is panning your camera. Now, the reason why this is very important whenever it comes to playing more stealthy is because you have a third-person camera view, so that means you're going to be able to see around corners much easier than a killer would who has the first-person camera view. This is honestly one of the best ways to get information, especially whenever the killer is right next to you, and it's just a good way to get, an idea of where the killer is going, which we're going to cover real quick with this example. So as you can see here, Billy is looking for us, and he is on the other side of the wall. I hear him open a locker, then I get behind a wall, and then I pan my camera ever so slightly so I can see which way he is going to go. And once I see where Billy is going to go ahead and go, I go ahead and go the opposite way to avoid a very unnecessary chase. That way he goes completely away from me and we get right past him. Even though this is a very, very basic tip, it's always nice just to kind of get into the habit of doing this, whether you are trying to play a little bit more stealthy or you're just repairing gens. So it's just something to get into the habit of, and I figured I would just go ahead and mention it. If you don't do it, go ahead and do it. That way, you can get the jump on the killer and hopefully sneak past him. Now let's head into our fifth and final tip. The fifth and final tip that we are going to cover is using the environment to your advantage. Now there are going to be times where you have no choice but to hide and you never see the killer coming. Sometimes you just gotta hop into a locker or even just hide in some bushes. Now let's go over an example of where we had no time to come up with a creative hiding place and we kind of got caught in the middle of a chase, but let's go over that example real quick. As you can see in this example, I am working on a generator and Felix and Nemesis are in a chase right next to me. Now this is one of those times where I don't really have any time to react, and unfortunately I did make a mistake of running, but I was able to get into a locker and hide. Luckily for us, he never even checked the locker, and there's even a good chance that he's seen the scratch marks, but I wanted to kind of point this out just because there's going to be, times where you have no choice but to hide in a locker or even, just a small bush. So don't be afraid if you run into this situation and you have no choice but to, jump into a locker or you have to, hide, by a bush. Because sometimes it does work. Actually, it actually works more than what you would think. So if you have to, don't be afraid to do it because, there is a good chance it might work, especially in this type of scenario. Alright guys, we have reached the end of this DBD Stealthy Survivor guide, if you will. But I do hope that you guys enjoyed it and all that jazz. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys learned anything from this. But I do hope that you have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you on the next one, guys. Have a good one.